for coming and for taking time out of your sunny Thursday evening to come and join us. So I'm Aoife Ryan. I'm the behaviour therapist on the Living My Life project, and I'm joined by our project manager, Keane, and we're going to talk to you about a little bit about our project and how we use interdisciplinary supports and approaches to support adults with intellectual disabilities to transition towards independent living. So just an overview of what we're going to chat about. Olive is going to talk to you a little bit about the project, how it came about, the kind of aims of the projects. We're going to talk about the team makeup, so who's on the team, what roles they have, responsibilities. And then I'm going to chat to you about where the independent living movement came from and why that's so important, what interdisciplinary supports are, and then I'll talk to you about how we kind of come together to teach skills to support adults to transition into independent living. So Olive, will you chat about the project aims, and I have the slides so I can get going there. Yeah.
So I suppose the aim of the project is to create pathways for people with intellectual disabilities into housing. And I suppose this is a collaborative project between the Brothers of Charity and Ability West. We are going to support 32 individuals over 5 years to find housing solutions and to prepare them to actually move into those living situations. We have 5-year we have 5-year multi-annual funding secured from the HSE, which is very unusual. Normally, people with intellectual disabilities have to be in an emergency. We're very lucky that we have the funding for the 32 people, and we're the next 5 years, and we hope that with our success that will roll on into the future. Supported by the Proactive Carers Galway, which is a group of parents who are very actually this project coming into it's very much they're very involved. They're part of the reason why we're here. And it is because very often, as most of you know, when it comes to people with disabilities, it's usually when it comes to an emergency situation where people are housed. And I suppose services and parents got together because they want to have a more planned approach towards this. So what we did was we targeted people with low to medium support needs who live at home in the family home. These are people who would typically not be looked at unless they ended up in an emergency situation where their carer got ill or passed away. And I suppose what we did was we targeted them by we sent out expression of interest forms to everybody who lives in the family home with the low to medium support needs, and we had a closing date for it to come back. So that was last year, that was last June, and we got 124 applications back. Out of the 124 applications, 21 of those were inappropriate referrals because of their needs were too high for the project. And then we had 103 that were suitable for the project. So in order to get through that 103 applications fairly and to give them all due consideration, we formed a Pathways group, which involves 2 of the senior managers in the Brothers of Charity, the West region, 2 of the senior managers in Ability West, the head of social work in Ability West, and the head of social work in the Brothers of Charity, the West region, and also the project team. So each application was given due consideration, and we whittled it down to 32 people. We could have taken 40, but unfortunately we don't have the funds for 40. So that's how we've started. Do you want to go to the next slide? Yeah. So I suppose what we're doing is that we're working with people. So initially it was just me and the social worker. It took a while for the rest of the team to come on board, and we're still waiting for a speech and language therapist. Closing date's on Monday, if anybody knows anyone who'd be interested in that. So I suppose we met with everybody to see what it was that they wanted, what they wanted their independence to look like, what skills they needed to work on. And initially, I suppose this will have to be done in conjunction with the local authorities, which is Galway City Council and Galway County Council. So it was a good bit of work to go around and gather and see where people were. A lot of people thought they were on the housing list, but in fact, all they were was on a list for residential in their services, they didn't realise that there was actually a difference between the two. So I suppose we've helped some people do applications for social housing, but we had to gather all that information, and then we started up a subgroup with Galway City Council. And there was already an existing intellectual disability group with Galway County Council. So we brought all those names in and we checked through and see where everybody was on their housing list and what the likelihood of them getting housing from those two authorities within the next 5 years. And I suppose Ability West also is an approved housing body. So we would be looking to them to support us in purchasing or procuring property for the project. And also the Brothers of Charity here in the West have an associated housing body called Peter Treast. So we'd also be looking to them as well, also to provide housing for us. So I suppose the project team is helping people to prepare them for independent living, with very practical stuff like household chores, money management, cooking, and community participation and social and communication skills. And I suppose the social and communication skills are really important for people with intellectual disabilities because they suffer from isolation and very often be very lonely. So I suppose we have a big job there, you know, but we're very lucky. We have a very talented team. And I suppose we're trying to break it down into who's most likely to get housed first. And we're targeting those individuals first off, and also those who are going to take that little bit longer. People who have like autism and you know, behavior issues, that we would target them first because they're obviously going to take a little bit longer to get there. So Aoife is working with those individuals and she's doing a mighty job. Do you want to go to the next slide, Aoife? Oh yeah, that's me. So I also manage the project team, which is a great pleasure. I'm very lucky with the team that we have. Analyst, and we also have Cara O'Regan, who's our senior social worker, and who's our occupational therapist. You'll read about them, there's more slides, and Josephine Lally, who's our research officer. I suppose the part of this is that the Minister and Rabbit and us also getting this funding, and I suppose what she wants is she wants a blueprint in other CHO areas around the country. So we needed to have a research and development officer to kind of pull all of that together, because in our different bits, and she's just going to pull all that and basically do a manual from learning from our mistakes and our successes, of course. I already mentioned Galway City and County Councils there. It's not easy because we're also competing crisis as well, but also it's in both local strategies for housing that they house people with disabilities, and I suppose we're kind of will be able to help them satisfy that part of that in their strategy. We have met with all the families and all the people who will be involved in the project, and we're supporting also people who are on the waiting list, because we've 71 people on our waiting list. People are not on the housing list. Well, actually, a good bit, few of them are now, because we've started working with easy feet. There's an awful lot of paperwork. Most people hate paperwork, and there's that you have to get in, and like all bureaucratic organizations, no offense to them, if one piece is missing, the whole thing is sent back. So it's really important to get on of actually doing that. So I think I've kind of covered what, and I'll hand you back to Aoife.
Cool, thanks, Olive. I'm going to introduce the other members of the team. So as Olive said, we have a number of clinicians and then a research and development officer. So the next person I'm going to talk about is Cara Regan, who is our senior social worker, or social work team leader. She was the first person to join the project after Olive. And Cara has written this herself, where she talks about the roles and responsibilities that she has. So initially, similarly to Olive, she would have met everyone at the outset and carried out assessments to see kind of current needs, future needs, and where supports might be needed for somebody. She also helps people to apply for social housing and can support families with that as well. She's a really good knowledge of that whole world, and she's just absolutely brilliant supporting all the families and the people themselves. She also networks with services across the both organizations, but also will reach out to other services. So I know she's reached out to a couple of organizations who are doing something kind of similar to what we are doing, and just to see, was there any learning? Could we improve what we're doing? And like try not to reinvent the wheel if it doesn't need to be done. Building relationships with stakeholders, ensuring communication and information sharing is all there. She also coordinates the planning meeting. So we would have kind of reviews for people who are on the project. So someone close to moving in, we might meet more regularly just to see how they're getting on, what they might need. But equally, we would meet people who are further away from moving in to see, well, in that time period, do you need support? What skills maybe do you need to develop that might take that little bit longer? Arranges sites to other organizations, like I said, trying to learn, develop the knowledge base, and develop best practice. Ensuring that the person remains at the centre as they should be, and that not only herself but everyone else on the team works in line with the person's will and preference, which is really important, I suppose, given the context of the ADM Act at the moment. It's moving from, I suppose, what's in the person's best interest to what's actually in their will and preference, and helping them to maybe even find that out for themselves. And then traditional social work services, like, say, for example, if complex issues arise or if there are any safeguarding concerns, Cara then supports with that. Next person that joined in was Shifra O'Kelly, who is our senior occupational therapist. Shifra comes from a background of supporting people in community mental health, so she's really, really experienced at supporting people kind of develop occupational and independent living skills. So that's a really big part of her role, and very clearly why she was chosen to be on the project. And then looking at kind of daily living skills needed for living in the community rather than living in like a traditional maybe group home, for example, where you have staff with you maybe at all times, or who are there quite frequently. Helping people to adjust to their new homes as well, which can be kind of a scary thing, you know. It's a scary thing for anybody to move into their own place, and just making sure that people are kind of adjusting well and settling in well, and then supporting people with things like home maintenance and meal preparation, and also engaging with the community, because like Olive said, this group of people can be more susceptible to maybe isolation and loneliness, and just making sure those kind of links with the community are there. Helping people to develop routines that are balanced, and that's important. So it's not all like work, or that someone's day is just really unstructured, but that there's a balance between maybe being meaningfully occupied, which is really, really important, rather than just doing, oh, it's really nice that, you know, you're doing this task, as a tick the box exercise, rather than she helps people to explore what they find meaningful for themselves, and helping to develop like self-care routines and hobby routines as well, which is really, really lovely. Looking for areas of need, so that can be in relation to like skill development, but also in physical environments as well. So if somebody has an additional physical need, for example, she would help to assess the environment and see what I suppose place a person might need, depending on an additional need that they may have. Promoting goal setting, so like setting how to set a goal, how to reach it, attain it, and kind of help people to be a bit more confident there as well. Speaking your speech and language therapist, we don't have one, but as Olive said, please join us. We are recruiting for one, and it would be absolutely brilliant to have a speech and language therapist on the team. We can see for some people that's definitely needed. So the closing date is Monday. The speech and language therapist, we hope, will ensure that their practice is person-centered, the same as the rest of us on the team, but that they bring communication expertise. So helping people to communicate well, in line with their will and preference, aiming for kind of high quality of life, helping people to make choices and participate in meaningful ways. helping people to have, I suppose, environments, communication environments that are accessible to them and inclusive, but also maybe upskilling other people in maybe additional communication strategies that might be needed. Enabling optimal support. So if anyone has FEDS risk, so FEDS is feeding, eating, drinking, and swallowing. So people who may have additional needs around that, so that they can eat and drink as safely and enjoyably as possible. And then there's myself. So I'm the behavior therapist on the team. My, I suppose my central aim through all my work is helping people to maximize their quality of life. So kind of meeting people and trying to explore and identify values, which I'll talk a little bit about later, but helping people to kind of figure out what they might like for their life. Co-producing skills teaching targets, so rather than arbitrarily picking targets from an assessment or a curriculum, talking to the person about what skills would you like to learn. Let's maybe make a list of skills in different categories, different domains, and work together to kind of design how that might work. And then individualized skills teaching programs. So at the moment, I'm doing one-to-one work with a small number of people. So they would have maybe more complex needs than some other people on the project. And so I have started to do individualized skills teaching programs that they have kind of actually started and picked the skills themselves, which is really, really lovely. I'm also going to be, I suppose, support for creating capable environments. And again, I'll talk about that later on, but kind of looking at different aspects of an environment, of a person's life in a number of different areas, and just ensuring that all those are kind of capable of meeting their needs and making sure, again, that their quality of life remains high. Training for staff and families if that's needed in like skills teaching support. So I'm working with some families at the moment. Some of the young people I'm working with are doing some skills teaching at home because they're learning home related skills. So that makes sense. And I have, it's just some absolutely phenomenal families that I'm working with and who are really eager to support their children. And then hopefully we will have some support workers join our project too to also implement and support some skills teaching pieces. And then, if needed, carry out functional behaviour assessment and write behaviour support plans. So, as Olive said, the people that we're supporting on this project have low to medium support needs. I know traditionally behaviour therapists might support people who have maybe higher support needs, who engage in behaviours that challenge more regularly. At the moment, we don't support anyone who has, for example, like physical aggression or self-injury, but may have difficulty navigating social situations or understanding boundaries and those kind of more abstract skills. So if that's needed, then that can be done for the person too. And then last but not least, we have Josephine Lally, who's a research and development officer. So I know all of it kind of summed up, but what we're trying to do is, I suppose, carry out a study that demonstrates the outcomes of the project. So that we're really looking at the quality of life of the person is central throughout, and that they're aligned with a number of legal pieces such as the ADM Act, like I mentioned, and the UNCRPD, and also looking at cost effectiveness comparison. So like Olive said, many people end up in inappropriate, often emergency placements that are quite costly, whereas, you know, we're trying to see, hopefully, all going well, that this might be a more cost effective and hopefully better way to support people towards independent living. And that the people themselves are the voice of the project, as well as their families and maybe worries or concerns that families might have for people living on their own, and then collaborating between the different organizations and also policymakers at different levels. Documenting how the project develops, challenges, outcomes, and so on, and then taking out, I suppose, key lessons, and then hopefully bringing them to local, regional, and national areas, I suppose, and hopefully that something like this could be rolled out again. And part of that involves disseminating about the project and sharing the learning. So I'm going to talk to you next about independent living, because it's a core value, I think, that we're supporting, that the team are supporting and working on people with. So the independent living movement actually evolved that way back in the 70s in the States, and I suppose it rose out of disabled people who were trying to fight against their experiences of being excluded, discriminated, would have come from people being institutionalized inappropriately and so on. And although it started there, it still applies to us here. And in our context, we see it in a number of acts and laws, such as the Disability Act, the Citizens Information Act, the Equality Act, employment, equal status, education for persons with SEN needs, UNCRPD, and so on. So the Centre for Housing Law, Rights and Policy in the University of Galway has some really good information actually on independent living. So I'd suggest if you wanted to check that out, their website has lots of really great stuff there. Part of the, I suppose, trying to learn from maybe what had happened and what we could be doing better. There was a report by Mansell and colleagues that said that, you know, thankfully now, rather than looking at trying to provide a place or a thing for someone, like a building where they live or a particular program that they do, that it's more about actually trying to develop and provide a range of help and resources that can be adjusted as needed and is individualized to a person, rather than kind of blanket program supports or housing options. And that really importantly, it should enable people to live their lives the way that they want, but also while acknowledging that some people may need support and protection, maybe due to some vulnerabilities or additional needs that they might have across the course of their lifespan. So what is independent living? Because some people think it's living on your own, and it's so much more than that. It's about having choice and control over your life. So, you know, I suppose we're fortunate maybe that we're able to do more things for ourselves, maybe have more choice in our lives, have more control over the things we do. And so we're trying to support the people on our project to actually identify, well, what choices do I want to make for my life, and support them to kind of be in control and have ownership of that. That people with disabilities have the same opportunities as people without disabilities. And rather than being a thing that you do, it's more of a broad idea, and it's a human right. So we all have a right to independent living. And it's the right housing with the right support. So it's, again, it's not, here's a house, you can go and live in it. It's, well, actually, you know, I have some additional physical needs and I really struggle with climbing stairs, so I need a ground floor place. Maybe it's, I have, you know, I'm not independent with managing my medication yet, so I still maybe need someone checking in with me, but most of the time, other than that, I'm okay. So it's the right home for somebody with the right support that they need. And again, it's individualized to the needs of the person. Not only that, it should be in line with their will and preference. So again, we've moved away from this idea of, well, that's in their best interest, to what's your will and preference, and helping people to understand what will and preference means. And even teaching something like choice making, which someone may not have done before. It should also be not only appropriate to, but capable of meeting the person's needs. And again, I'll talk to you in a little bit about what capable environments are, and how we kind of use that model on the project, and what that can look like. Most importantly, it's not a model of residential service. So we're not a separate organization where you have you know traditional, what some people might call group homes, or people who have 24/7 wraparound services. So it's not that kind of a thing. And again, it's more this idea of being in control and making the decisions in your own life. Inclusion Ireland is a really good resource, like nationally here in Ireland, for this kind of stuff. They have some really good information on independent living as well. And I think this quote sums up really, really nicely. It's not doing things by yourself, it's being in control of how things are done. So again, people hear the word independence and they might think alone or isolated or lonely. And some people have kind of confessed and said, will I be on my own? I was like, no, it's helping you to be independent in your life and live the life that you want for yourself. Moving on, then I'll talk to you a little bit about interdisciplinary working. So in, I suppose, the kind of organizations that we might work in, or in education or other kind of healthcare settings, there's much more of an emphasis on clinicians and other kind of roles coming together to work together with a person to help kind of design the supports for them. And there can be this idea that, well, multidisciplinary is one thing and interdisciplinary is another, but they're actually used interchangeably incorrectly. So we maybe have heard multidisciplinary or MDT more, but we, I suppose, take an interdisciplinary approach, and I'll explain what that means. So multidisciplinarity or multidisciplinary team, they draw on knowledge from different disciplines, but they stay in their boundaries. So it's everyone kind of stays in their own lane. So if I was someone accessing services, I might have, for example, speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, and social work. But they're all doing their own separate things, rather than kind of co-working or coming together to create maybe kind of more holistic support around a person. Interdisciplinarity then, or interdisciplinary working, analyzes, synthesizes, and harmonizes, which I think is a lovely word, the links between disciplines in a coordinated and coherent way. So what we try and do is look for kind of shared areas, or actually, you know, maybe, for example, I know behavior analysis and some pieces in occupational therapy often do the same things, we just call it different names. And so rather than I'm going to do my one thing and you're going to do your one thing, it's like, well, let's come together. Okay, let's see where we have kind of shared knowledge, ideas, and kind of come together to create a really kind of robust support for a person. They both refer to the involvement of disciplines across a continuum. So I really like this way of describing it. Multidisciplinary is additive, so adding on top, but interdisciplinary is interactive. So the disciplines interact, come together to create that kind of well-rounded support package for a person. It, at the core of it, I suppose, is identifying person-centered goals within a team approach. So what we try and emphasize is, rather than kind of, like I said, in our own lane, we're interprofessional. We are a team-based approach, so we jointly work on targets and goals, and have really strong communication with, not only between ourselves, but with the person as well. So we'll often meet someone together and talk about maybe goals that we'd identified or targets that we're working on. And I think I love this picture of it, where the two red circles are an example of a multidisciplinary approach. The person is technically at the center, but the two supports aren't really coming together. Whereas the interdisciplinary approach is the two blue circles, where they come together, and I love that they kind of are around the person and there for them. So it's where are the shared areas that we can contribute. Also, I suppose, acknowledging that not every discipline shares every single idea the same. But anything that we can kind of come together to work collaboratively on, that we will do this. And so Neuro Rehab Times was also a very good resource for kind of learning about interdisciplinary working in a more maybe accessible and digestible way. The next thing I'm going to talk to you then about is values. So I don't know if anyone is familiar with values or values work, but values are activities that give our life meaning. So they're the things that matter to us in our lives. They're things we strive to be and to work towards. And I suppose they're the things that really, really, really matter and are important to us. They aren't goals though. So you don't accomplish a value, you live a value. So rather than saying, okay, well, I'm going to pick values of, learning to go shopping or learning to use an ATM card, that's very separate. So like your value might be independence. And then we choose goals based on that value. Okay, to be independent, you could learn to do your own shopping, you could learn to use an ATM card and so on. I like the description of them as a compass. So they help us to make choices based on where we want to go. And teasing this out has been really interesting for people, but also as a team, we're trying to tease out, well, what are our values? Where do we come together? Because a lot of the even though we have different disciplines and come from different backgrounds, there's a lot of shared values and shared I suppose, things that are important to us, naturally enough, that we're coming together, and the team, we share a lot of the same values, even though some we might have slightly different ones depending on our own kind of individual backgrounds and disciplines. Values are individual as well, so it's not based on what other people expect from us or what we think we should be doing. We choose our values, so nobody should come and tell you what your values are. We shouldn't pick them based on what we think other people want from us, which is kind of like people pleasing, or it's like, oh, I probably really should be more organized, for example. We choose them. They're not static either. So if I am working with someone and they're like, oh, these are my values, but I'm not, maybe I didn't used to think like that, or I'm not sure what it's going to be like in future. They change over our lifetime, and we can even have whole different values in our personal and professional lives. So talking to people about, maybe as they move more towards independence, that their values might change a little bit, and that's okay. This is the values compass that we use with people. So it's we're kind of inviting people to take a breath, notice how that feels for them, and then choosing their values. So we might talk to someone about their values and their purpose. So the prompts here, for example, if you look at the top left quadrant, it says, what matters to you and what values would you want to express in this situation? So the situations we're encouraging people to think about are ultimately independence. But we're not saying that they all have to be related to independence. So we might ask people, if you were to live in your own place, if you were to be, maybe have some more independence than you have now, what might that look like for you? What things would be are important to you? And then if you look, the arrow going straight up, it says towards. So at the top, the kind of top half of the compass is things that bring us towards or move us towards our values. So towards moves are behaviors that you engage in that move you towards or bring you up towards the value. So it could be, for example, like those things I talked about there, rather than picking goals as values, I might pick skills teaching goals that move someone towards a value. So for example, there's someone I'm working with at the moment, value they've chosen for themselves was independence, and that to that person it involves being more organized. So behaviors that he's like, I would like to maybe manage my own appointments rather than my mom managing them for me. It involves him doing his own grocery shopping rather than his parents doing his grocery shopping for him, and so on. Then at the bottom half, it's the things that pull us away. So in the bottom, some things maybe hook us. So a hook is an inner experience. So it's a feeling, an emotion, a thought that pulls us away from our values. So what hooks? So it could be the thought that I'm not good enough to live on my own. I'm not able to learn the skills I need to live independently. I'm scared to live on my own. And then equally, we look at behaviors that might move you or take you away from those values that are under control or I suppose informed by the hooks. Now, this is quite complex, but can be adapted for people depending on communication needs and style. And so I'm really looking forward to, I think, working alongside our speech and language therapist with maybe adapting this for people who have different communication needs. So this is just a sample compass. It can be simplified down. The language can be changed, but it's something that I'm really happy to explore with people. Again, rather than kind of arbitrarily picking skills teaching targets, it's like, let's take a second and actually, what do you want for your life and how can we support you to get there? One of the other things that I'm using is the assessment of functional living skills. So if anyone isn't familiar with that, it assesses functional, practical, and essential skills of everyday life. So it's a behaviorally informed curriculum that is referenced against quality of life, which is very, very nice. So traditional curricula are often for children are referenced against things like academic goals, developmental milestones, for example. But the AFLs, which is the acronym for the Assessment of Functional Living Skills, the AFLs is referenced against quality of life. So that's why I think, in line with kind of the values of the project and the ones we hold as clinicians, that it was a really important curriculum to get. It covers 1,900 skills in 66 functional skill areas. So that's a lot of skills, but not everyone needs every single skill. I looked at it and I don't think I can do every 1,900 in that. And, you know, talking to people, some of the people I'm working with are saying, well, I'm worried, you know, if I can't do all of them, I won't be perfect. And I was like, I don't know anyone who can do all 1,900, but let's help you figure out what ones you really want to do and what matter to you. There are 6 protocols in it. So the protocols cover different domains in people's lives. So there are basic living skills. So this is the first protocol. So we would do this with everyone, and it covers really foundational life skills, but also looks at maybe potential barriers to independence, like behaviors that challenge if someone has quite high support needs in relation to like personal care, eating or drinking, and communication. So that we do that with everyone, just to see kind of where the basic needs are, and we would, you know, maybe look at or chat to the person about if there are some skills that need to be learned there, how would they feel about learning them and when they might like to learn them. Conveniently, there's one on home skills. So it's about managing a household. So it involves things like cooking, cleaning, household chores, and kind of home mechanics, like repair, kind of small DIY pieces as well. There's independent living skills, again, very important to us, because we hold independence very highly. That covers things like learning how to use money. It can involve things like, you know, connecting with people, making social connections, and so on. Community participation is exactly what it says there. It's can you navigate your community safely? Are you a valued member of your community? Do you want to have a lot of community participation and engagement? Because some people don't. So talking to someone about this, I was talking about, you know, making friendships and making connections with people, and he was kind of quiet, and I said, do you want that? And he said, not really. Like, he's happy to engage with people in different contexts. So that's again, like, he's kind of informing and leading the kind of skills teaching targets related to that. There's one for vocational skills, which is lovely. So if somebody wanted to maybe get a job or do some work experience, how would you prepare someone for an interview? There are different types of jobs in this as well. So if you were supporting someone to work in retail, if you were supporting someone to work in the food industry, so there are lots and lots there. It does come with the school skills booklet. Now, it's not applicable to people supported by our projects. We're supporting adults, but that doesn't mean that there aren't skills from that. Some of the people that we're supporting really still like those traditional kind of academic tasks. So maybe learning about common knowledge, writing, like doing little projects and reports and stuff like that. So it's not a priority protocol, but it's there in the background if needed. And so these are the authors of that. It's, if there are any behaviour analysts in the audience, it's a follow-on from the ABLES. So the ABLES is for children, but the assessment of functional living skills actually covers a number of skills across the entire lifespan. So it can be done with younger people as well. And this is what it looks like. So the blue book at the top is the guide. So it teaches the behaviour analyst to how to conduct the assessment, how to write up the skills teaching plans, how to score, and so on. And then there are the six booklets and the 6 protocols. Each can be used as a standalone assessment, so you could technically do them one by one. You could only do one. You could do 2 or 3. It's up to you. But rather than kind of doing that, what we try and see it as, that they're different modules of a kind of like assessment across the lifespan. So looking at someone's life in multiple settings, rather than just, okay, you know, this is for independent living at home, but being independent is so much more than being able to cook and clean. It's about, can I make connections with other people? If I value that, can I navigate my community, as I was talking about earlier? So we look at it as kind of like extended assessment and creating like a really individualized, person-led kind of program, I suppose, for the person. So we would probably be looking at creating, folders for someone that would have a number of different areas in it based on their kind of AFL's preferences that they might have to learn skills from that. They're all different, but they're all connected. So even though they cover different domains and different areas, there is a unifying theme in that what we're trying to support someone to do is to be as free, independent, and have as many opportunities as they possibly can. It can be used to determine current skill level. So we would look at it as like extended assessment over time, where we might do it initially to see what skills that someone already has, what skills a person is missing, and then to track across time the progress of these skills. They're all designed to ensure that we give people the best opportunities to learn to do tasks for themselves, even the mundane ones, because life sometimes is a bit mundane. And we're just trying to set people up, I suppose, to be able to thrive in a number of different real world settings. And also staff and parents can be trained to complete it as well with support from clinicians. So like I said, at the moment I'm working with some families where we're kind of working on skills teaching targets together, and I'm going to help them to kind of track the progress of their children over time. So I apologize for this being crooked. It absolutely annoys me, and it broke my heart trying to get it straight, but I can't. So this is what the AFLs looks like. So for example, this one is taking from independent living skills, and this focuses on the transportation skills. So you'll see tasks. So on the furthest column, you'll see tasks. So it says TR1, TR2, TR3. That's the task number. And I'll show you the graph next and how we look at those. So each task is broken down into a number. It's scored from either 0 to 4 or 0 to 2. And it's basically it's criteria for seeing how able someone is to perform a skill. So if we look at TR1, which is locating a bus or a train stop, it's really nicely broken down into objectives. So again, if we're thinking of skills teaching targets, well, our objective is here. This is it. Can they identify where to get on and off at a bus or a train stop? And then the way we would do it is, if we're doing the assessment, is we might ask the person themselves, like, would you be able to know where to get the bus, where to get off the bus? As in, where is the bus stop maybe closest to your home, closest to your work, closest to another place that you frequently go? We could ask somebody who supports them, or we could observe as well, depending if the person is okay with that. And then an example would be that they go to the bus or train stop nearest residents to go to work, to go to the store, to go to a restaurant, and so on and so on. And then here are the criteria. So a score of 4 means that they can catch the bus or train in at least 4 locations and ride it to at least 4 locations. And then it goes down and down depending on how able someone is to perform that skill. This is a graph, so it looks very scary, but I promise you it's not. As I said, each cell in the graph represents a skill, so you'll see the numbers there. So for example, money management has 30 individual skills, independent shopping has 20 individual skills, and the number of cells tells you the criteria for it. So if we take MM1, which is money management 1, for example, there are 4 cells. So if someone scores 1, then the cell gets shaded. The first one gets shaded in. If it's 2, it gets shaded halfway across, and 3 is 3/4, and then 4 is all the way across. So if someone is completely independent, doesn't need support with the skill, it gets filled in the entire way across. If this score is 0, this little circle beside the number gets filled in. So it means they don't have that skill in their repertoire currently. You'll see at the top there, it says you can put the learner's name in, who's assessing it, the date, and the color code. So the color code is for each assessment across time, you would color in or shade in the cells in different colors. So this has been really fun sitting with people to kind of explore the different colors that they might like across time. And I can show you an example here of somebody. So this has been anonymized. This is the basic living skills protocol. So you can see this person actually has a good number of really important foundational life skills, but struggles a little bit with anxiety and navigating some social situations. So you'll see there's it's a bit blurry, but the first one is like self-management, then there's communication. That person needs no support with dressing, no support with toileting. You'll see for some of them there's a line across. If there's a line across an NA, that means the skill isn't applicable to that person or that context. So if we take the middle one there, TL, which is toileting, the first four are NA because that relates to somebody who might need incontinence wear or full support with personal care. And then the ones up the top that are NA, they relate to someone being independent with like their menstrual cycle and menstrual hygiene and things like that. So this person doesn't menstruate, so those skills aren't applicable to them. If you look to the right, then the second last one on the right, you'll see that's actually quite a lot that are empty there. But they relate to first aid skills. So not everyone knows first aid, but it would be really important to know, who do I call if I have a first aid emergency? Can I do some basic first aid myself? So having talked to that person, they don't really want to learn those quite yet, but might like to learn closer when they move in. It might make more sense for them. And then how do we actually come together then and support people towards independence? So we work using the capable environments model, which is, if you haven't read it, it's a paper by Peter McGill and colleagues. It's absolutely brilliant, and it's been really, really, I suppose, transformative in the way that we are designing supports for people. So a capable environment is it describes the person's social, physical, and organizational supports individualized to them that they should receive. So the characteristics of a capable environment are associated with preventing behaviors that challenge or reducing. So sometimes it might, someone might still have a risk of behaviors that challenge, but it makes it less likely. But most importantly, it's improved quality of life outcomes. So again, although we don't support people who have behaviors that challenge in the sense of physical aggression or self-injury, we still might have people who would need some maybe support with different types of behaviors that challenge. This is an example of skills taken from the table in the paper. So they talk about the characteristic, what it involves, why it's important, and really importantly, is there support or evidence for this? So if we take the first one, for example, it says support for participation in meaningful activity. What does this look like? And then for each of the skills, the areas, it tells you what it would look like. So for this one, it would involve providing tailored assistance for the person to engage meaningfully in a number of tasks, and then the different type of assistance that person might need. Why is that important? So that it goes through that for each of the skills, and then it gives a reference to some evidence or support for that. These are the 10 features of a capable environment. So skill support relates to the staff supporting you. So are they skilled in supporting me in the way that I need to be supported? For example, if I don't use words to communicate, but I might use an AAC device, do they know how to use it with me? If I use love to communicate, are they trained in love? Can they communicate with me? It goes through things like positive social interactions, so that people are receiving interactions in the way that they prefer, and that they're held in high positive regard by everyone who meets them. What needs do they have in relation to communication, meaningful activity? Are they able to make choices for themselves? How are they supported to maintain relationships with people if that's something that they want? Are their routines generally predictable? So predictable in the sense that there would be familiar things to a person without making them very rigid and inflexible. So it's more so ensuring that a person can kind of predict what's generally going to happen for them. New skills, which is where we definitely come in, supporting people to develop skills that maybe they haven't had the chance to do yet. Looking at someone's personal and health needs importantly, and then the physical environment. So is it set up to support me in the way that I really, really need? here are some examples of how we think we can come together to do that. So here are just a few skills taken from the capable environments model there. So if you look at support for communication, naturally enough, speech and language therapy would be involved. But also I think we as behaviour analysts often have a role in helping people to communicate with things like functional communication training. And so coming together to kind of look at the shared knowledge we have of communication, but also bringing new ideas. So definitely I would see as like, I love to learn from our speech and language therapist, if we get one hopefully, about learning more about supporting people to communicate their will and preference. Support for participation in meaningful activity, again, working together to explore what's meaningful to the person. What does meaningfully occupied look like to them? Can we design maybe a schedule of leisure activities? Can we teach leisure skills? And I think a good number of us would have some skills in that area. So should have explained the key. SLT is speech and language therapy, BT is behavior therapy, OT occupational therapy, and SW social work. So support for maintaining relationships with friends and family. I think social work definitely have a role here. Maybe if somebody has kind of complex relationships with people in their lives, if there are any safeguarding concerns, but also helping people to communicate with those around them. And definitely speech and language therapy have a role there, and that we would have a role in kind of social and communication skills. So how can we come together and bring all those things, co-work to design relationship supports for somebody? Between ourselves and occupational therapy, then it's supporting people to function more independently, whether that be through daily living skills, navigating the community, social skills, and so on. So there's a lot of crossover between the work that we do. And then providing acceptable physical environment. So we would have a few people who would have specific sensory disabilities or physical disabilities. And so OT certainly have a role there in like assessing the environment to be suitable or capable of supporting someone's needs. Social work would also be really, really good at that. And then we would come in, as in the behaviour analyst or behaviour therapist will come in and look at those things as well, but maybe also from a sensory perspective. Like, are there things in the physical environment that may upset or bother someone from a sensory perspective? And what other things could we put in to make that go well for somebody? Here are just some examples I've picked about IDT approach to skills teaching. So an IDT approach to skills teaching is, like I said, all of us, we come from different disciplines, but there is a lot of crossover often in what we do. And we sometimes do the same things and call it different names, but that we work collaboratively with the person. So it's not just that we're sitting in the office working together, designing a plan and handing it to a person. They're also involved in it. And again, like I said, that's through early values exploration, looking and seeing what skills a person has, what skills they, would be beneficial for them to develop, kind of teasing that out with them, but also how close are they to moving in? If they need to move in, if they're, ready to move in soon enough, then they might need more intensive support. If somebody's a long way off but needs a lot of support, then maybe that can be done in a more, measured way. So what we do with the person is set goals and make decisions together. And then from a team perspective, we share resources and responsibilities. So one example could be our lovely OT Shifra has a brilliant daily living skills program. But some people who've maybe more complex support needs or need things broken down a bit more, the AFLs can come in there, and we can kind of look at it and say, actually, let's take that skill from the AFLs and put it in the daily livings program. And again, that's tailoring it towards the person and the individual. An example from, this is a real example from myself and social worker supporting someone to understand and set boundaries. So boundaries from another person, but also that they set boundaries themselves and to kind of help them be a bit more autonomous, navigate some really complex interpersonal situations, and online and community safety, which we're trying to educate that person about. And then another example that would be really beneficial, for example, is the speech and language therapist, but also a social worker, like teaching people choice making and self-advocacy, and again, teasing out and helping someone to identify what what's will and preference? What's my will and preference? What do I want my life to look like? And so they're just a couple of pieces that I think could be really good examples. So this is what it's all about. Setting goals. I love this quote. Setting goals is the first step into turning the invisible into the visible. So it's about making tangible the dreams and aspirations that someone has. And I do have permission to show this. This is one of our absolutely gorgeous young men that we're supporting on the project, and I helped him to make pizza on his own for the first time. So when we talked about moving, towards independence, he really wanted to do cooking, and he chose to learn to make pizza first. So we had great fun in the kitchen, and I tell you, I was very hungry looking at the pizza that he made. He could be a professional chef. But he was just, what kind of struck me was how genuinely thrilled he was. And he was so, so happy that he was able to do that for himself. He was also very happy with the fact that his mom agreed to let him have pizza once a week so he could practice making them. So he's a very happy man, and it told me all about the other pizzas that he made. So if anyone is ever in Galway, would 100% recommend getting a pizza from this lovely, lovely young man. I'll just share some contact details as well. If anyone wants to reach out with questions or to kind of know a little bit more about the project, feel free to drop me an email. I'm always happy to talk to people about what we're doing, and also just being honest that we're kind of figuring it out as we go along, but doing so together, and like that, always keeping the person at the center. So that's why our logo is my community, my way, my life, and so we're helping people to live their best life. So with that, I will stop sharing my slides. That's okay.
Wow. Thanks very much to you both. Well done, Aoife and Aoife.
Thanks, Alan.
I'm really genuinely inspired because, we've been at this for a long, long time. In November 23, Professor Peter McGill gave us a talk to the ISBA, and there he talked about capable environments as well. But his colleague and friend, the late Professor Jim Mansell, his last project before he died was called Raising Our Sights. And what he was challenging us to raise our sights to is to see that, listen, independent living is possible, and it should be what we're aiming for. People need to have tenancy in their own homes, secure, have autonomy and choice in their own lives. And I might put a link to the Raising My Sights project, which is Professor Mansell's last project. I'm sure you've probably seen it before, but it would be very interesting and aligns very nicely with your project as well. I'm really, really happy to see this happening in Ireland. It's a wonderful initiative, and I hope it continues to be.
Thanks,
so is that okay? Olive, do you have anything else to add, or?
I hope I did okay, Olive, by the way.
Brilliantly, yeah.
Yes, you did very well, Aoife. Rather you than me.
Yeah.
I'm not the best public speaker in the world.
So any final words, Olive?
No, I suppose this is a work in progress. I suppose we can come back in a couple of years and let you know how we got on.
Excellent.
We do have, obviously, the challenges we have ahead of us is homelessness and competing with that for housing, and I suppose equally the other issue we have is recruitment for support workers, because obviously in our sector that's a huge issue across the board, but we're kind of hoping that this kind of project would attract people because it's not traditional and it's not overnights, and it's not it's very flexible as well. So we can come back to you in a couple of years and give you an update.
I'd love to hear. Okay, I'll stop the recording there.
Thanks, Alan.